Welcome, welcome, welcome to Queer Conversations. I'm your host, G of Verity TV. We're here every single Tuesday, 6 p.m. EST. My guest today is Tiffany.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tiffany, let me tell you this. I don't really read people's bios, but I want to read part of your bio.
Go ahead.
Because I was like, okay. So this is Tiffany Burks. And let me just thank everyone for joining us. And please share this video. Please like this page, Verity TV. And you're welcome to ask questions. In fact, we want you to ask questions. Ask questions of Tiffany, ask questions of me. So ask questions, okay? Don't be shy. Are you feeling shy or you're not shy?
Not shy today.
Good. Not shy today? Not shy. So please ask questions. Tiffany is a queer freedom fighter, black feminist healer, community organizer, unapologetic prison abolitionist, and restorative justice circle keeper. I love that. And there's more, but I love that.
Right.
So how did you get to the point of your life where this happens? How do you become a freedom fighter?
I think it all started with just my love of the community, and especially because I was born in Miami, grew up in Broward, so I'm very connected with the South Florida community. And when I moved back down here in 2015, I was like, I want to get more involved. I want to, do the work. And so I went to an event that was thrown by the Black Lives Matter Alliance Broward.
Nice.
And it was actually an action called May Day, and it's actually coming up again this year. And it's basically just highlighting how people put their lives on the line for us to have like an 8-hour work day. And so I was like, if people could fight for something like that is almost like a forgotten, thing in history, I could definitely fight for my community with the current issues that I see. So ever since then, I've been really connected and like just doing the work.
Yeah, and what's the work? Like what do you do? Tell us some of the things that you do.
Yeah, so I'm a community organizer, so that means I work on local campaigns. One of the most recent campaigns that I worked on was the Take Down Racist Street Sign campaign.
Love that, thank you.
Yeah, it was just 3 racist streets in Hollywood, Florida that were named after Confederate generals that fought to protect the institution of slavery. And so basically there's been a campaign that's been going on for over a decade from community leaders, and my group, we came in and helped supported that campaign, and through that we pretty much embarrassed like the Hollywood City Commission to change the 3 streets. And the other day I actually got to witness like in person one of the streets being changed from Hood Street, which is a Confederate general, to Hope Street. So yeah, so it's definitely been
work.
Yeah.
That is great work. And we got shout out to everybody who's joined us. I see that Juno is saying it just left there, but what did she say? Like she's saying that she loves this person, that you rock. So yes, she does rock. That's hey. So yeah, that's why we got her in Queer Conversations.
Yes.
And I know you're involved in the Inconformistas.
Collective.
What collective? What's that?
It's a collective of women and gender non-binary folks who get together once a month. We drink wine, we talk about a lot of different things, but we talk about how we could change the community, and that looks like from violence, toxic masculinity, all these things that, affect our own communities and that we have experienced ourselves. We talk about how we could actually, change it or work together to change some things.
So you said gender non-binary, so the people who are in it don't have a particular gender?
Right.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does that mean? Because we know, but a lot of people watching,
right?
Because this is the whole world can watch this. This is Facebook. Hello,
right.
Facebook, right?
Hey.
So what does that mean?
It means that, so a lot of times people feel like, people have to be a woman or a man, right? And so like we live in this binary world that's been subscribed to us, but you have some people who are like, I don't identify as either one of those things, right? And so how do we make space for those people to feel affirmed and welcome? So our group, we do that. Like, we realize that sometimes people, don't want to identify in that binary, and we have to give them room to,
that's great work.
I
love that. Yeah, the world's changing.
Yes.
Now, what's your ancestry? Like, I know you're born here, but are your parents from America?
The Caribbean.
What is it like? Like, do you think that impacts you in any way? Like, how does that impact you if it does?
Of course, like, I grew up in a Caribbean household, and my household was, not as like accepting of like, you know, different people who identify as gay or queer or like those things you don't really talk about
Right.
that, you know, like growing up in a Caribbean household. So I think even my identity is something that my mom is still like
what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty much like what's going on, but it's more of like, let's not talk about it.
Okay.
You know, and I think that happens in a lot of Caribbean households.
Of course,
like
yes.
just speaking with my friends too, like, you know, even being queer, like I'm so like queer and like my identity with my friends, but even when I go back home, it's kind of like those are conversations that
Right.
are not really had, you know?
So, and I always ask people how they identify. So you say you identify as queer.
Right.
And I also like to ask people their coming out story. So for you, is there a coming out story?
There's really not one. I want to say that I do have one, but it really was like at the beginning of 2017, like just me feeling comfortable to just come out and say, you know, I'm queer. And I think it was just an experience of being around so many other people who were just so comfortable in their being. Like even my best friend, she
Wonderful.
identifies as queer. And I always have the conversations with her of like, you know, I'm attracted to people's personalities. Like I'm not really attracted to like one, you know, gender type of person. So I always had those conversations with her, but I graduated from actually being like, oh, if people could live in like their truth, then I could definitely do that as well. So that's kind of like,
I love that.
yeah, the
I love
transition.
it.
Yeah.
What about for your mom and your family?
So my mom really doesn't like, it's kind of like one of those things where I don't keep it private, but she doesn't really talk about it. I'm very open about it, like on Facebook or
So she knows, but she prefer not to discuss it?
Yeah, she doesn't really discuss it. But like my sister, my friends, like people I went to college with, they're all very accepting of like me being queer.
Wonderful. I love that. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We have Rich saying, Tiffany gonna bring it. Hey, what's up? Rich, greetings everybody. Thank you for joining Queer Conversations. This is where we amplify the voice and visibility of the LGBTQ community, and we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Our guest today is Tiffany Burks. She is a queer freedom fighter. And I want to ask you about this too. So, you know, it might be a myth, but there is a sense of things. So a lot of advocacy work I do is with actually about being gay, being queer. And your advocacy work, a lot of it is about being black, right? Right. There's this kind of sense of like that the black community has an issue with the queer community. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of that actually has to do with like what society like, you know, influence us to believe, right? You know, I think a lot of people think like, oh, like the black community doesn't want to talk about these conversations, but there is a lot of black people who identify as, exactly, two people right here in the flesh. So I think that it's like having more of those conversations. It's kind of like with mental health, it's stigmatized in our communities, but we go through like mental health issues, and I think that just talking about like LGBTQ is like an issue that people don't want to talk about, but it's like actually like, you know, being a part of this community is a beautiful thing, right? How do we take the stigma out of it? How do we take all of those things out of it? And I think like even having these type of conversations are great, you know, tools to like really show other people like there's more people who identify, you know, like, and giving people those outlets to see that representation of people who look like them. That's what made it easier for me, right? I saw my best friend, like people who are close to, just like being so comfortable to live in their truth, and it's like I don't have to shy away from that, you know. So this is important to have these type of conversations.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so let's see what people are saying. Okay, Rich says a phone is buzzing. Okay, that stopped. So there was something buzzing. It's okay now. Any questions? Ask Tiffany questions or ask me questions. Anything you want to know, you feel free. You can ask her anything, her social security number, her PIN.
Wait a minute.
Right. Anything. That's it. You come on Queer Conversations. You gotta answer any questions. So while we're waiting for some questions, let's see here. Yes, thank you, Gail. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Let me ask you a little bit about like your love life and so on. I mean, is it okay to go from like Black freedom fighter to your love life?
Sure.
Okay.
We can talk about it.
What's going on, and like, who do you like, or what's going on? Let me just leave it open for you to see. What would you like to share?
Well, I'm single.
I'm Tiffany's single.
Hey, right. But I identify as like poly, right?
Okay, nice.
And that just means when I have, you know, relationships, I can have multiple partners at one time. And that's kind of like been something that I've been comfortable saying too for like a little bit over a year. So So there's a lot of concepts that you're talking about that are pretty modern. There's a lot of people who are listening who
who are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So there's non-binary, which is, you know, deciding that you're not going to fall within society's norms of male, female. And there's poly, which is polyamorous, is saying, I love many people.
Right.
Right. And obviously society, and it's funny, society is saying we should be, you know, you pick a partner that's your partner for life, but then divorce is probably as common as marriage, right?
Right.
And then a lot of infidelity in relationships. You know, so what is it like? I love the concept of poly in many ways, actually. And I mean, it's not for everybody, but what I want to ask is, you know, so when you're in a relationship, that would mean that the people you're in a relationship would have to feel comfortable as well.
Exactly.
Right. And how is that working out?
Actually, it's been great. I feel like, even though now I'm single, right? But I feel like even the relationships that I had that have been poly, I feel like there's been a whole lot more communication and like agreements that, you know, people could feel comfortable like actually discussing. So I feel like it has actually like improved like the partnerships and
like stronger relationships.
Yeah.
You have to talk more.
Exactly. Talk more and communicate and come up with things that both parties agree with, right? And I think that level of communication is something that I have like never felt in even like relationships where I wasn't practicing, you know, poly.
Wow. Yeah, it's very interesting. I like it. What about stuff like jealousy? Like, you know, I mean, is that something that is taught, or is it something that we actually feel as a human emotion? Like we feel emotion like fear. That's natural, right? A lion is running towards us, or we think we're falling. There's fear. But is jealousy something that is taught like you should be jealous, or is it natural like fear?
I think jealousy, it might be natural, but I feel like how we see like love, like even in movies and like just different things, like it actually like teaches you to be jealous. But if you really think about love is not jealous. It's not like territorial. Like it's none of those things, like, right? And so it's like, if you could have like multiple family members that you love, like why can you not extend that to partnerships?
I know. It makes sense. Like you have many children, you love all your children. You have two parents, sometimes more. You have aunts, uncles. It makes a lot of sense. So if it's romantic love, why is this that one place? You gotta love one person, and for the rest of your life. So yeah, I mean, of course, there's Judah saying poly life hashtag. So more poly. You get a lot of poly support there. And David is saying jealousy is silliness. People need to be honest. Honesty removes jealousy. And that's true. I feel like if you're being just really honest about it, like jealousy arises a lot when, you know, people are doing things that are like sneaking and texting. So someone's looking through your phone. I'm looking for my phone. My phone's up there. You know, so all this stuff. So that's when you're open, then you don't have to worry about that. So it's all very open and so on. Question. Thank you, David. Have you found that there's many people dating who accept poly?
I feel, I think that there's a lot of people who, I think because I'm like in a community of folks who largely identify as like queer and poly, right? So it's like, those are like kind of like my dating like pool and like things like that. But like for my friends who really don't get it, I think like even when I have conversations, they're like, oh, well, that kind of does make sense, you know, and I think like that's like kind of what I've mostly been seeing like with people who I've been like dating and who don't really like get it, or like they're just like, can you explain that more? Like just breaking it down and like just having those real conversations and asking questions, and they're just like, actually, yeah, and then they'd be like, oh, like that actually does make sense, you know? So it's just having those conversations, you know, so.
And is there, in a community of poly, let's see, where do I sign up? Okay, you just stepped up. Well, I want to ask this too, because, I mean, I tease my girlfriend because I feel like, you know, let's say I wanted to be poly, I'm not sure about the energy. That's one of my concerns. Like, like the energy, and I'm not talking about like, oh, in having all the sex. It's really like the conversations. Like, do you have to have boundaries? Like, okay, so say my girlfriend wants to tell me everything that happened today. Does the other person also tell me everything that happened today? Like, that's a lot of energy. So do you have to like boundaries around like what depth of relationship?
I think it's just like boundaries that you set for yourself, like in general, when you're at work, you
could be on the phone like this and texting back, yeah, I love you too. Oh my gosh, yes, I'll be right there. Okay, I'm on my way. It feels like there's a part of it that could be draining.
Yeah, and I think it's just like how you manage your friends, right? Like, you know, you set boundaries with your friends. Sometimes you have some friends that you talk to once a week, right? Or you have other friends that you talk to every single day, right? I think you gotta check in with, you know, your partners and be like, what works for you? What works for me? Like, you know, like, and see what situations are you in. Do you live with one of your partners?
Right.
Do you not? Like, I think you have to take that all into consideration, and then from there come up with boundaries that you guys could like commit to.
I love it. I love this. Great.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Listen here. Please steer all the woke, queer, polyfam folks to my inbox.
Oh my God.
I love that. Okay.
Hey.
So everybody who's queer and poly, you could this is worldwide. So you could get people Australia, Ethiopia, London, Bangladesh.
All of that.
All of that. Reach out to Juno. She has all the energy and time. She's got it, right? So yes. So thank you everybody for joining us. You are watching Queer Conversations on Vergy TV. We're live here every Tuesday, 6 p.m. EST. And my guest today is Tiffany Burks. She's a queer freedom fighter, talking about her work in the community, great work, and talking about her love life and these concepts that a lot of people are not even aware of. Like I've heard of poly, a lot of people today are hearing about it for the first time.
Right.
For people who want to get involved, we're in South Florida, or even people beyond South Florida, people want to get involved in the kind of work you're doing in, would we say the Black community?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Black community. How do people get involved? Like, what's your suggestions? Someone's watching this and like, oh my God, I love what Tiffany's doing. I'm ready for it. They post stuff on Facebook that's relevant. They do things that they think are helpful, but they want to get out there and they want to do more. What's your suggestions?
I would say right now you could follow, if you're on Facebook, the Black Lives Matter Alliance Broward.
Okay, nice.
So that's like the larger umbrella group that I do a lot of my organizing with, especially with the Inconformista Collective. And just start coming to meetings. Like we post all of our events on Facebook. If you send in, there's like a place where you can fill out a form on our Facebook and we'll add you to our email list. And so you'll know about the events from Facebook and email. And that's pretty much how you can start getting involved, like coming to the meeting.
How often are you guys meeting?
We have our general bodyship meeting once a month.
Okay.
And then there's several different committees, so no matter what you're interested in, we probably have something, that we're working on as far as like a social justice issue in our community that you could join the committees, and they meet on the off weeks of our general bodyship meeting once a month.
Okay, good. Thank you. And we got Nikki Lopez Creative here helping produce this this live.
Yes.
I was going to say this event, but this is a live show. It's not an event. But you could put in. She's putting the links for what was that? The Black Lives Matter Broward Alliance Broward. And shout out to everybody doing that good work here, and worldwide and in the country. I want to talk to you a little bit about how are we on time. We're good. Great. A little bit about this. I saw you at where were we? Black Women Rise. Right. And you raise a point that people have been raising, and I would say it's potentially controversial, but it's something that people are becoming just more aware of.
Right.
And this concept of the attention and the media platform that has been somewhat given, to the students from the high school here, near where we are, Stoneman Douglas. And although obviously we're happy that they're getting a great deal of attention and support, there is this concern about, well, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a youth movement as well, and hasn't got that kind of attention, and has in fact gotten some negative attention. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been in contact with some of the Black youth from Stoneman Douglas, and really just hearing their story about how the climate of their school was, very racist and anti-Black, like, really before the shooting. So when you see like the faces of like the Never Again movement, and they don't look like, me or you, the students at Stoneman Douglas feel that, and several other people who've been doing this work, feel that as well, and I think that we have to have those conversations, because even now as they're starting to, share their platform with like the youth from Chicago and whatnot, it's like you also too need to extend that conversation to like the students that share the hallways with you, they go to your same school, and they're also too talking about gun violence in the community and extending that conversation to police, and police violence. And when you see things like the manifesto that they release or the statement that they have on their website, it calls for an extension of the police, And so it's like that is something that is directly against what the black students at the school want, because they're like, actually more police in our school do not make us feel
don't help
safe.
us at all.
Yeah, and
that's
so
who's killing us.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
and so when they're talking about like sharing that platform, it's also giving a voice to that narrative that's not being shared on like a wide, like on a national level from the Never Again movement. And so that's kind of like the work that I've been doing with some of the youth at the school, is like, how do we share that narrative and also say, like, you can't say never again without saying Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And so I think that that's kind of like the conversation that we've been having. That is important, right? Because it's like, it's a conversation where some people might think is, risky, but you have to have those courageous and honest conversations.
I think so. I mean, when everything happened, especially that's so close to home, know, I think nearly everybody knows somebody either whose child goes there or goes there, so it impacts us directly. But there was this, and very swiftly, like this attention that came to the school, which I think initially most people were like, oh yes, great, and I think it took a little time. I remember Oprah said something like, this reminds her of the civil rights movement. People are like, Oprah, come on, we love you. Everybody, we love Oprah, but hold on, what do you mean?
Exactly.
So I think it shows so much of how much, when we say Black Lives Matter, and how much they actually just don't in that way.
Right.
That when we see like these younger white folks that we're like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Exactly.
And it happens in a lot of arenas. Like if you're white and maybe rap, you're like, oh my God, this is the best rapper ever. But you got someone who's down the road who could rap really, really well, doesn't get the same kind of attention.
Exactly.
So, but I think it's a tough conversation because you don't want to devalue what's taken place.
Exactly.
But you do want to show that attention to say, hold on. But these young people have been here for years, right? This is Black Lives Matter is about 3-4 years by now.
Probably like 4 or 5.
4 or 5 years,
yeah.
And continuously impacted. I know that last week or maybe the week before there was another shooting, Stephon Clark,
in
Sacramento, and it's just ongoing.
Right.
It's ongoing. So no, I appreciate you sharing that.
And I think it's interesting the point you said that they could go to Chicago, but then in their own school they have not addressed that segregation.
Exactly. Even to this day, and that's the important part too, right? Because I think that if we're having gun violence conversations, we have to talk about too, right? How all gun violence is
how it impacts us.
It's how it impacts us and how it's a byproduct of state violence, right? How are people so accessible to these guns and like all these different things, and so like we have to talk about like America and the police violence, and we have to talk about like America and our obsession with war, right? Because once we have those conversations, we could kind of start even seeing like these mass shootings in the history of like, why is it white males that are doing this, right? Because like black students who are getting bullied are not shooting up their entire schools, right? And so it's like we have to have those conversations too. So, and I think that that's what the youth from Stoneman Douglas really want to do. So I'm like so glad to see them like really,
I think they got a good push.
Being resilient.
With that. No, thank you for sharing that. It's a tough time. It's a tough conversation.
Right.
Glad that you share that. See here. Did you hear about the shooting earlier today? Lady shooter. This is what, school or police? I did not hear.
And we're talking about the shooting with the person who had mental health issues earlier today. Who's asking? I know. Oh, right. So I think that there was somebody just sent me a message about somebody who was having mental health issues that was shot by the police. And to me, that reminds me of several conversations, like even locally, of like people who need mental health support. And instead the police officers come out, and a lot of times they have history of these people having, mental health issues, and they still proceed to like, shoot these individuals. So I know that was something that somebody sent me a link earlier, like literally right before here, but I haven't even had time to read it yet.
Yeah, this one was actually the one where a lady went into the YouTube headquarters and did another mass shooting. It's not, we don't know how many people are dead yet, but a few people had gone to the hospital with injuries. At least 4 were shot, and she then apparently shot herself. So I think there's a belief that she was... Yeah, it happened like 2 hours ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I hear it might be like a boyfriend-girlfriend thing, but I don't know.
Oh, wow, no. Did not hear about that one yet.
I'm sure we'll see a lot more about that.
We never hear women shooting anybody.
So it's very rare.
Okay,
it's rare. Yeah,
wow.
very rare. So yeah, with a personal relationship, we see this comes up quite a bit. So yeah, I wanted to share this flyer. As David asked, what's beside me? So this is just advertising this show to make sure people are aware of it. Spread the word wherever you are in the world. If you're interested in hearing LGBTQ stories, advocacy, art, all kind of things that we're doing, all kind of things in the community. Let me see if anything else that you wanted to share. Design. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about design and what's design. A lot of things that you do. I'm like, I need to define it first.
Right.
Tell us what it is.
It's kind of like a radical magazine and conversations that you wouldn't necessarily see like on like a mass like scale, like Teen Vogue or
right.
And so it's like it's pretty much those conversations, and it's called How We Get Free because it's named after a book written by Black feminists about the Combahee River Collective, which is a group of very radical Black feminists that were very prominent in the 1960s, and so this book was written about them and some of the people who started the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I did a kind of like a local inspiration of with this magazine, zine. I always have to say it out.
Zion.
Right? Because I've said that several times before.
Zine.
And so I did a local version where I interviewed local Black feminists because a lot of people like look nationally for things, but I'm like, we have a very rich culture here locally of people who identify as being Black feminists. So did interviews with them and kind of talked about locally what are some of the radical things being done in the community that's being led by Black women. So
that's great work. You're doing great work.
Yeah,
what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated? Like, I want to keep doing this.
The liberation of like Black people, you know, that's what keeps me going, and I'm committed to that.
I love it. Thank you so much for being committed.
Thank you.
I think we're wrapping up. Knowing some at the time, how are we doing with time? But we got 4 minutes. Great, because I got some questions for you to wrap up.
All right.
So I want to make sure that we've covered everything. So what about if people want to get in touch with you? You said, what's the best way to get in touch with Tiffany if they want to get involved? Do we have that there? I don't know if you want people reaching out to you or just coming to the Black Lives Matter meeting. What do you want people to do?
You could come to the Alliance meeting, but I'm also very accessible too. So if you send me an email, I usually respond back within like 28 to 48 hours.
So what's your email? Will you share here?
Yes, my email is tifanny, tiffany.burks@gmail.com.
Thank you. I love your generosity in sharing yourself and all the work that you're doing in the community. And
Tiffany.burks@gmail.com.
Yeah, and it's Tiffany with one F.
Yep.
Right.
And
2 N's. And Tiffany's usually 2 F's and 1 N.
Yeah.
That's I love Black people because we love to do that. We love to do things different. We gotta do a little different. Yeah, thank you. Big up woman. We do it a little different all the while. I love that. So we're wrapping up. I want to touch on one thing before I get into my ending queer conversation questions. One is I love everything that you're doing. And I see here yeah, you're welcome. Thank you too. Restorative justice and prison abolitionist.
Right.
This is a few minutes to talk about that because some people once again, what is that? No, but I love it. I mean, obviously our jails, and it's heartbreaking to see how they're just like, you know, we're so disproportionately incarcerated.
Right.
Share with us just a little bit about what this means and what's being done.
Yeah, so like if anybody ever watched the documentary 13th, it came out recently on Netflix, and it basically talk about, just like what you were saying, like how the criminal justice system incarcerates Black and brown people at alarming high rates.
Yes.
And so being a prison abolitionist, this is actually a term that I learned from Angela Davis.
Love it.
Right, and she came down here, I think almost now 2 years ago, and I went to go see her, and I pretty much was like, I always knew that I was a prison abolitionist, but she gave me the words and the language that I didn't have access to, right?
Yes.
And it's just also just saying that like the prison system doesn't rehabilitate people.
No.
People come out and they're even more criminals.
Yeah, and they can't get a job because they got a record now.
Exactly. Can't get a job, can't get housing. Like, so it's like you want people to return to society and be like, you know, law-abiding citizens, but then you lock them out pretty much on every single level to do those things, right? And so like even Florida right now, we have this rights restoration campaign looking to restore the rights of like 1.5 million Floridians who have been locked out of like the voting system, right? And a lot of those people are Black, and it's just having those conversations of like, what would a world look like where we had livable wages, you know, free college education, universal health care, like all of these things, like where we had like a more just society where people didn't feel like they had to do all these random things just to make it, right? You know, like a lot of times like you have people who work 3 or 4 jobs just to make ends meet. And so like sometimes people don't don't want to be like, you know, quote unquote criminals, but they result to things just to survive.
Right,
and so it's like, how do we actually have a society that, you know, sustains people and, you know, they could actually provide for themselves? And I think that we would see that a lot of crime would go down.
Yes.
And, you know, like we would actually have like a better like living society. And then we could also hold people accountable for what they did and not just throw them in a jail where they come out and they come
Hardened.
to do to do more crime. So yeah.
Good work. Oh man, I love it. We need a big applause for Tiffany here.
Thank you.
All this work. So yes, please share this video. Great conversation talking about being a freedom fighter here in the United States of America. Talking about being queer, talking about Black Lives Matter Collective, talking about being poly, talking about non-binary, a lot of great things here. And Nikki's the same before we wrap up.
Yes, so question. Okay, there is Black Lives Matter Alliance Broward. For someone listening to this and they're inspired to now try to get active, what are some tips you could give them to get active and advocate?
That's a great question. So if you're not in Broward, where we are in South Florida, where else can people get involved? Because anybody in the world can watch this.
Or
so
how can they start it?
You're right.
You know, where do they look for organizations like that? And if there's not happening in their neck of the woods, how do they start it?
Right, and I think a lot of times is so. If you're looking in your neighborhood and you're, you know, typing up words like Black Lives Matter or different organizations that are doing like similar work, and you can't find one, my suggestion is to basically just go out in the community and ask folks like, what are issues that are, you know, plaguing your community? Like, what are issues that you care about? And then once you get your neighbors together, and then you're just like, well, we know that the city is doing this. There's, you know, there's a lot of different issues going on around like education. That's a campaign that you could work on. Like, you know, like if the education system is that we want, you know, better, I think like textbooks, there's like a school right now, I forgot what state, where they're sending in pictures of like the textbooks that they have to use in their classrooms. Like that's a campaign, right? Because you're gaining like that visual attention of like books that are literally crumbling apart, right? So there's like, you know,
there's so much work that can be done.
So much work.
So you can start it, or you can connect with an organization like Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter is throughout the entire country. Right. There's chapters throughout this country and so on.
Right.
So yeah. Okay, thank you so much. So okay, QQ, queer conversation, closing questions.
Right.
You want to say that 4 times really quickly? Okay. So, where do I start? What inspires you?
Ooh, Black women.
Ah, I like that.
Black women.
I like the ooh.
Yeah.
Before
It
the black
inspires
women.
me too.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that too.
Right.
So, what's sexy?
What's sexy? Going to the new beach, which is something I want to do.
Okay, so going to the new beach. I haven't done that. Okay, so I want to do that. And then the last one is, what's the best thing about being queer?
That you don't have to like subscribe to any one thing, right? Queer is something where it could always be expanding. You could always evolve in your thinking.
Yes.
So queer is not any one thing. That's what I love about being queer.
Love it. Love having you on Queer Conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And please share this video and tune in again next week.
Yeah.
Great having you. It's Tiffany Burks, if I can reach this. Bye. No? It didn't.